Ooh.
Okay, good evening, everybody. This is the regular meeting of the Rome Board of Education, dated October 14th, 2021. The time is 6 p.m. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes of the special meeting September 20th, 2021, and the regular meeting September 23rd, 2021. I so move those the 2 minutes.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ferretti. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Blake, are there any additions or deletions?
The only deletion from the agenda is there is no need for an executive session.
Okay, report of superintendent.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's been a fun week so far. It's great to have the kids back. Still working through a few last bumps and bruises with the transportation and making sure that everyone's on a correct route and getting what they need. But all in all, things are much better this week than we were experiencing prior to our remote days. And so let's hope that we are done with that. Great to see the kids in schools. I know we haven't started our board pride walks yet, but when you do get a chance to get in there and see the kids, Don Budman, the legal counsel for the district, went to visit RFA today, and he came back and he said it's just awesome to see the kids, and you can see the smiles on their faces even behind the masks when they're walking the hallways. And so, if you've been in a school at any point this year, it's a very magical moment to see the kids and being with kids and doing kid things. So great to have them back. We were informed early this week that the federal government did sign off on New York State's FEMA application. So our next step is having some meetings with them to see what that means as we move forward in relation to the Staley property. We don't have any other information at this time other than FEMA has approved the state's application for FEMA funding. So when we get more information on what that looks like, we will let you know. Kind of on the coattails of that, we do have a capital project planning meeting tomorrow. And Mr. Haggerty will be attending that project meeting, which time we'll probably have some preliminary discussions about options for Staley. I know that the redistricting consultants are in district this week, visiting schools, getting their eyes on the actual facilities, seeing the layouts, seeing the sizes of things. And they should be beginning their community conversations in early November. They plan on hosting 2 community-wide discussions about what the parents and the community and the teachers would like to see within their schools. I also believe that Ross said he was preparing to have an update for the board sometime following those conversations before they make their actual plan or their recommendations public, which should be happening sometime in December. Just as a quick update, we do continue to have conversations with our Teachers Association about what 2021-2022 school year needs to look like. Administratively and with the teachers, we've all pretty much been able to realize by mid-October that this is not the school year that any of us would have envisioned in August of 2021. Even 8 short weeks ago, people thought the school year would look very different than what we're experiencing. So we recognize the need to make sure we're constantly regrouping, having conversations, and if something is not going the way we anticipated it, to make sure that we adjust and find ways. And most specifically, what we're working on with the teachers is looking at finding ways to make sure that students are quarantined, have more direct access to teachers and instruction throughout the course of the day and into the evening hours as well. If you can remember back to this time last year, we did have teachers working in the evening to connect with families that needed some support with instruction or some answers, kind of in a tutoring model. We are looking to bring some of that back so that students and families have more access to teachers directly when their kids are in quarantine. We know that's a big bugaboo right now. We're hopeful that we can lobby with the county to get some changes done there. Pretty much every school district across the state is in the same boat, that the quarantine restrictions are worse this year than they were last year, and we need to have something change. So we're hopeful something can change, but We don't control that, so what we do control is what we can do to kind of help students and families get the help that they need. As we move through the year, we have begun the conversation about winter sports. As of right now, there's no mandates related to winter sports other than you have to wear masks indoors. There are conversations amongst the Tri-Valley League, among Section 3. I believe New York State High School Athletic Association will also have conversations about limiting possible limitations of attendees at events. It is recommended that athletes test at least every other week, if not weekly. Right now, we are not doing any of that. We're going to stick to our guns. If it's good enough for physical education during the school day, it's good enough for athletes at night as well. So I know a couple other local districts are on board with being as least restrictive as possible, making sure that we can, if I can fill my auditorium for a musical performance, I should be able to fill my gymnasium for a basketball game. So we're doing our best to kind of make sure that that doesn't happen, but it might be possible that there's some new rules and regulations coming down related to winter sports that just quite aren't here yet. But I will continue to keep folks updated on that. I did have a conversation with the mayor today that we will be giving the go ahead to youth winter sports. So like indoor little league basketball, things of that nature that might be happening that last year were not able to happen because of facility usages. But anything that does involve elementary age kids that normally would have run during the winter, we are going to make sure we work with the city to get those students into the schools and being able to do those things throughout the winter this year. Quick bit of update, NYSER, the governor settled a lawsuit with NYSER today. NYSER is the New Yorkers for State Educational Rights. If you go back several years, that organization is an advocacy group. They sued the state for foundation aid discrepancies. The governor today settled that lawsuit, which basically means that all school districts will be receiving their full foundation aid by the 2024-25 year. It's only good news in the sense that it solidifies the news we heard last spring. We knew this was going to happen. Governor Cuomo had committed to making sure that happened. Governor Hochul has now memorialized that it will happen. So that's positive news for us that we don't have to worry about whether or not our foundation aid increases are coming. It has now been a settled lawsuit, and we can count on that more than we could 6 months ago. So that's a positive thing. Last two positive things here. Just want to thank all of our principals, Mr. Ferretti. This is National Principals Awareness Month, Appreciation Month. So thank you to the work that you do for your school, Mr. Ferretti, and all of our principals out there in Rome. We've talked about this continuously. The job of a principal right now has never been more stressful than any year past, even more so than last year. Principals across the country, the state, and obviously specifically here in Rome, they are working many more hours, way harder than they ever could have imagined. So I thank them for everything that they're doing. I know it's not easy. I hope that it will continue to improve, but as this is National Principals Appreciation Month, I just want to give a shout out to our principals out here in Rome. And obviously, Mr. Freddie, for those that know, is a principal in his own right. So thank you for everything you do for teachers and kids in your community and our community and all those good things. Last thing on the heels of National Principals Appreciation Week or month, next week is New York State Board of Education Appreciation Week. So thank you to our Board of Education here in Rome for all that you do. It is a thankless job, and more so for anyone that's joined a Board of Education during COVID. Even more power to you, because although you don't know anything else, it has not been anything close to what being a Board of Education member is really meant to be. And it's been stressful. It has not been easy. Like I said, the work is thankless. A lot of times people completely misunderstand the amount of hours that are required to put in from a board perspective, and the amount of work that's put in to try and at least even keep your head wrapped around what's kind of happening at 1.5 million miles a minute. Everyone on a Board of Education, generally speaking, has another profession that they have to attend to as well. And so it does not make life easy. So on behalf of the entire school district, I thank our Board of Education for the work that you do, the support that you provide, and we're very thankful to be able to work with you all. So thank you for that. And next week we have some things coming your way. The board meeting doesn't fall on the Board Appreciation Week this year, but we've got some little items of appreciation coming your way throughout next week. So stay tuned for those.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. I have one question for you. I'm not putting you on the spot. RFA grandstand.
Yep.
You know, I've been hearing some complaint, I guess complaints, not really complaints, because they can't use the bathrooms. Can you tell the community what our plans are for that facility?
So as I put this in writing over a month ago now to the board, because the grandstands themselves are dilapidating to the point where there's a tremendous amount of water penetration, the inside of the grandstands has been completely filled with mold. So until we can have time to abate that mold and make sure the air quality is clean, we can't let anybody into that underside of the stadium. And this kind of goes to a conversation that's been had for a few years, is that we are looking to get a cost out on what it would take to refurbish the entire grandstand. But as we mentioned, because of the structure, it's a non-aidable expense. So any money we put into it is required to come out of the taxpayer dollars. And when you're looking at trying to improve classroom situations or school facilities versus the grandstands, 9 times out of 10, the school facility is going to win out over the grandstand. However, we are in a positive situation right now that we do have a healthy capital reserve, which will help us be able to take care of that. The only problem with that is it's not a timely process. It would need to be voted on, bid out, work. So we're working right now to remediate the current issue. We're also planning to remediate the permanent issue, which is to get that facility up to snuff and back as the shining gem of the region.
Good. I just thought the public, should be aware of what's going on. So
Sure.
they they're fairly tolerant. So I just wanted to make sure they understood exactly what was happening there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, can I follow up with one question about the winter sports? So this would be things like the Valentine and Stan Evans basketball, things of that nature. Are we in an okay position given that we have the Staley gym offline?
I believe so. Yeah, that's Mike Stamboli manages all that. He's aware that those things are coming, so I would imagine that we should be good.
Okay. I actually just had someone ask about that today, so I'm excited to hear that the kids will have those
that's good.
experiences.
Glad for the kids for sure. Okay, public comment time. Just a reminder that please hold your comments to 5 minutes. The board's not required to interact with you. You state your case. We may have some comments and reply, but just keep it to 5 minutes and keep it so there's no personal attacks on administrators, board members, teachers. And so our first and only speaker is Christy Albordi.
Do I need to stand up?
Just stand up so we can hear you, yes.
I have had a few things that were concerning me. Transportation, because of the survey that was sent out for parents to bring and drop off kids. Parking is a big issue because there is none. I have one student at Stroud and I have one student at Dundee. And when you bring them and pick them up, there's no parking at all because you have tons and tons of parents there. So I don't know, winter time is coming, so I don't know if that is able to be fixed or if there's some sort of system that can be worked out. Second issue was vaccines. Is there going to be any kind of mandate coming from the state for kids for schools that you guys know about?
We really don't know.
And the other,
If you want an honest answer to that, I would say for when the 12 and under happens initially, I don't think you're going to see anything mandated. I would eventually think maybe 2, 3, 4 years down the road, I think it's going to be added to part of the required school immunizations if things continue to trend the way that they are.
I already
with
have
illness.
notes from the doctors for both of my kids that religious, they don't need it. So I just didn't know if that was going to be an issue.
I don't think you'll see that this year, ma'am, but I can't speak for the future. It's out of our hands either way you go, but I'm gonna guess that might be the way that they tend to go.
I'm in constant contact with my kids' doctor. And the last thing I had was the mask issue with both my kids having asthma and everything else. Is there any way we can look, maybe, get together again and maybe optional for kids who want to wear a mask, fine, kids that don't, if they're on the other end? Is there any way we can have a discussion on that?
Right now, there's not, it's a state requirement that everybody in the school facility ages 2 and up has to wear a mask. We don't have control on that one.
So there's gonna be no open discussion on that.
At this time, no, not until the state changes their requirements.
I guarantee you they probably won't, but okay.
But there are medical,
There
right?
is a medical exemption. If your doctor is willing to fill out, there is a medical exemption form. The school nurse, nurses at Denty and Stroud and the administration should be aware of that you can ask your doctor to fill out if they're willing to go on record stating that the mask is unhealthy. You can have that
Yeah,
done.
because they both have asthma and they can't breathe. So
If your
I brought
doctor
it up
can
at the
get
last
that.
one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then you can,
Check with
You
your
do- you
doctor,
do
yeah.
have that.
check with your
Yeah,
doctor.
there is that exception.
Yep, I will. Okay.
Okay,
That's it. Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you.
Christie.
you.
Okay, now we're on to work study session. First up, the internal audit. You get to go first. this time.
Good evening. No, you're fine. Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Buckham. I'm Director with ESPR Group in Rochester. And we've served as the district's internal auditors for the last, I want to say 4 years or so. I'm here to discuss the internal control report related to the budgeting process. So this satisfies the requirement that the state has for internal audit for school districts for the 2020-21 school year. I know I have limited time, so I'll just kind of briefly walk you through the highlights. On page 4, we have a variety of different.
Hang on a second, Jim. Does nobody has a copy of the report?
Okay.
Well, I mean, we do.
Yeah.
Because we gather.
Those
So
are-
I'm just going to kind of talk conversationally then about the report.
Did
without-
everybody get an email?
Yeah. Dave sent
Oh,
it
yeah.
out.
That's right.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, in the report, we lay out the audit procedures that were followed. I was here in the spring and worked very closely with the business office, director of finance, walked through what the district's process is in terms of budgeting, reviewed a variety of different financial reporting, budget preparation materials, supporting documentation, and so forth. And again, I'll just kind of give you the highlights. So in the report, we talk a little bit about the historical analysis of the district's budgeting record. And with respect to revenues, I think the district has a very good record with accurately budgeting and forecasting revenue. 90% of the revenue comes from state aid and from taxes, and the district normally budgets that to within a 1% variance, less than 1%. So I think they have a strong record on that. With respect to expenses, about 5 or 6 different budget categories make up about 80% of the district's budget. And overall, with respect to those areas, the average budget variance was somewhere between 1% and 8% for those different categories. And that high 8% one was related to transportation, which was kind of skewed because of last year, or the COVID year, when 3 months worth of school didn't happen. And so there was a big savings with respect to that. Overall, bottom line is that the district appears to have reasonable, if conservative, budgeting approach. And I think that makes sense. Budgeting is an exercise in dealing with a lot of estimates and assumptions, a lot of unknowns that could change, healthcare expenses, pension contributions, whether we're going to have a bad winter, and utilities impacted. So overall, I think the district takes all that into account, and the historical record shows that it has accurate budgeting practices. We've got a couple of small findings in the report. One is related to the unappropriated fund balance. So the state State law, property tax law requires the district to maintain a unappropriated fund balance of 4% or less. There's a couple of years over the last several years where that exceeded that. 2 of the years it was a fraction of a percent, so it's not really a significant item. 1 of the other years it was over 6%. So that's just something to be cautious about. That's the kind of thing that could raise criticisms from state ed and or state comptroller's office. And then we have one item where we discuss the appropriated fund balance. And so that's kind of where the district will earmark a portion of its fund balance as a revenue source for the following year. When the district has a practice of doing that, because of its conservative budgeting approach with respect to the expenses, they've always had an operating surplus anyways, and they didn't really need to use that appropriated fund balance. And so when that happens, an argument can be made, a case can be made that that really just kind of goes back into what the fund balance was and further exceeds that 4% limit. So that's the kind of argument or criticism that the state comptroller's office loves to make, that state ed, could give you scrutiny for. I think the district is somewhat insulated from that argument, given the historical record that you have with setting a tax levy below the cap. So, you can't really, it's hard for the state comptroller's office to make an argument that you're overtaxing, the taxpayers by having that appropriated fund balance that wasn't necessary. They could make the argument that, well, your tax levy could have been lower. And I think the district is somewhat insulated from that because of the historical record on the tax levy and also due to the current low reserve situation that the district has. Those are the only 2 findings really that we had in the report. We also have a discussion about the historical tax levy that I just mentioned. And just, this is something that I think everyone is fully aware of. I know the superintendent has spoken and has included this analysis in his budget presentations over the last several years. So we've just got a brief discussion about that as well. And then we've got a section that just kind of talks about the other findings or the other results of the audit in terms of whether the district is submitting the required documents to state ed and to the state comptroller's office, the tax report card, the tax levy limit. Does it have a transparent budget process in terms of a budget calendar? Is it sticking to those items on the budget calendar? Required legal notices, and then the treasurer's reporting and budget transfers that are provided to the board in terms of for purposes of your oversight of the district's budget throughout the year. And then we've got some graphics and just present some graphs and just kind of the financial information that was used in the historical analysis that we discussed. So that's kind of the report in a nutshell. I know that I've got limited time, so take any of your questions if you have them, but that's really kind of a high level view of what the report discusses overall. I think it was a positive report. I think it shows the district has reasonable, accurate but conservative approach to budgeting. And I think the historical record reflects that.
Jim, can you just repeat or just elaborate on the part about how we're impacting the community and the district by not taxing? Because I think we always do try to take that more conservative approach and not place any more of a burden on the taxpayers than we need to.
Mm-hmm.
But clarify that, because I think that's an important piece for the community to understand, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
As well as new board members, because it's a concept I'm only now grasping.
Right. So school districts are restricted in the amount that they can raise, their tax levy each year. The boards decide on what that level should be. And the district has historically, at least over the past 6 or 7 years that we looked at, I think in 4 of those years, there was a 0% increase to the tax levy. In 2 other years, the board set the tax levy at an amount lower than what it could have based on that guidance. Now, there's a formula that goes into all that in terms of establishing what the district's tax levy can be, how much it can be increased. And the district for, I know there's a lot of different issues that go into this, the community at large, what can it, what's the burden that it can, accept and deal with financially and so forth. But there's an aspect of setting the tax levy where, because of the nature of the formula, when you set the levy below what you could have set it at, it has a compounding effect on future years as well. So you're not only losing a certain amount of revenue that you could have had in that year, but you're giving up the right to collect future revenue at an amount that you could have. And I think the superintendent has done an excellent job in previous years, kind of laying that out for the community in his budget presentation, which I've reviewed and attended one, in person. And so I think he's done an excellent job at kind of describing that. But the decisions that the board makes when setting that tax levy do have future ramifications as well. Now, I think, in a kind of odd, perverse way, COVID has been financially beneficial to school districts with all of the, with the extensive federal aid and government aid that districts will be receiving, at least for this year, and we'll see how it plays out. And so I think the district will benefit from that. But over the last several years, the district has had to appropriate a significant amount of its fund balance as a revenue source for the budget. And there's a very small amount in reserves. And so the district's fund balance, just from a pure financial position, has been challenging for the last several years.
And so for the layman, that's our savings account.
Correct.
That's not our checking account that we're paying our bills out of. Our fund, that's our savings account.
Right. And so, I think obviously all school districts have to deal with these decisions, and you're not alone in having challenges with the savings account. And again, I think kind of perversely, districts have kind of gotten a lifeline this year from a financial standpoint with the aid. And we'll just kind of have to see where that goes from here.
And just to follow up to that, what Mr. Carissimo presented to us shows that the tax levy that you're talking about makes up only a little over 20% of our total revenue. So the local share is not where the majority of our aid comes, state aid. And I know indirectly that's still all of us and the money we spend. But as far as your property taxes, that's a very low percentage of our overall revenue. So it's helpful the more that we as board members understand that, so that when people have questions for us, we can help them to understand. And we definitely want to be able to invest as much as we can in our kids. So it was, your explanations and your documents were very helpful.
Great. Any other questions I can answer? Okay.
Very good, Jim. Thank you. We appreciate your
I
time.
appreciate it. It's nice seeing all of you, and we'll look forward to seeing you again later this year.
Thanks for coming in
I think I'm
person.
scheduled to.
Good to see your face.
I know, it's been over a year, right, since I've seen you in person, so. We're scheduled to do the update to the risk assessment for this school year next month. And so I think we'll be out here early in November and should have a draft report to share with the district before the end of November. And then we'll get on your agenda at some point to discuss that with you as well.
Very good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay healthy.
You too, be well.
Before we get to line, I was remiss, I think, Mr. Meza, Christie talked about the parking situations at the schools. I don't know if there's anything we can do, but can you look into that at least? And forgot to address it, I'm sorry. Okay, external audit, Mr. Carson.
These are the board appreciation goodies I was talking about.
So exciting.
Oh, you're giving us a new one, Len? Well, this is the clean
This is the
one.
clean one. Yeah. Doesn't fit that.
No edit. Pretty green folder.
Yeah, right.
I can figure this out.
The colors haven't changed.
Thanks.
And how many years, Lauren?
No,
At least 30. At least 30.
it's way hard for us, our usual green.
And with the city, you should change the colors of the
Thanks.
binders, remember, right? You change the colors every year. Yeah.
I believe it's been a full year since we presented this report. All right, so what you have in your folder is which is not folder, it's the binder, and the top is the executive summary. We went over this quite in depth with the audit committee. We spent an hour and a half, 2 hours with the audit committee going over this. So I'm going to give you the
Reader's Digest.
shorter 1 hour.
I was gonna say Cliff Notes, but I don't think kids use those anymore.
First of all, thank you for having us. It's always been our privilege to do the city that we live in and provide the audit too. So in your report, in the executive summary, I'm not going to flip around too much unless there's questions. Obviously, we can address anything that you want. Like I said, we can go on for hours with this. On page 2 of the executive summary, these are the 3 main audit reports that we issue. There's an independent audit report, and then what we call a yellow book report. It's government auditing standards. And then down below is the single audit report. Each of these reports is the best report that I can give you. Just to describe them, we'll look at the independent audit report. We're opining on each one of the funds. So we're opining on your capital fund, your general fund, your school lunch fund, special aid fund. And we're also looking at the government-wide financial statements where we roll everything up and put all your long-term assets, all your long-term liabilities. And we're also looking at the schedule of federal awards that's also in your package. If you were to look at the binder and look at the table of contents, you would see there's a lot of good information in there. It's kind of your scorecard for the year. So just keep that, and we'll go over some of the numbers a little bit following these pages here. The other report that we issue is on internal control over compliance and other matters. And here we cover the litany of general municipal law, education law, we cover bidding, payroll issues, the fund balance limit, tax cap limit that was just spoken about. And then here we didn't have any material instances or significant deficiencies as well. The last report that we issue is on the single audit. And here you can see that you got about 9.3, almost $9.3 million in federal awards that we have to audit. We have to audit at least 20% of that, but this year you can see we audited 40% because we had to audit the ESSER and the gears money. So we'll have to audit that next year, obviously, because I think you already got about 6 million earmarked to recoup from 2021. So that will be done. We did Title I. We're required every 3 years to audit every program, at least every 3 years. that's over 750,000. So we usually spread that around between Title I, and then we go to school lunch, and then we go to special education. This year we did Title I, so next year we'll probably end up doing the nutrition cluster with the school lunch and and obviously the ESSER funds. But in that, we didn't have any material instances, issues that we had. We thought we might have one with payroll certifications, because we look at that as well. But those are done quarterly, and we didn't have any issues with that. The next page is a summary of a letter that's in your packet too. And it's called required communication with the board. And I'm not going to go too much in detail with it, but then we'll really spend a lot of time. But this year we had to implement GASB 84. GASB refers to the Government Accounting Standards Board, and that's what we're issuing our opinion based on, that you're in accordance with that accounting standard, those accounting standards. And that had to deal with accounting for fiduciary activities, basically. Some things that weren't in the report in prior years, just because of the way everything worked. Things like money that's collected for the library that you collect and then you pay it over to the Jervis Library. That wasn't being reflected in the financial statements, but it's something that you have control over. So now, because the way they set the standards and redefined everything, we have to account for that. Also, what's new in the report, they established a custodial fund that accounts for all the extra classroom activity. So even though I give you a report for the extra classroom, I'm also including in the main report. So your overall financial statements, your financial statements that goes to Standards and Poor's, your bond rating agencies. But that's on a full accrual basis. It means if there's any liabilities, we have to report them. In fact, one of the other reports that I gave you is on a cash basis for the extra classroom. So that wouldn't show any liabilities because it's cash basis. We're also required to report to you like if there's any audit adjustments. In the back, we did have several audit adjustments this year, probably more than ordinary. And that resulted in the continuation of the comment that's on the bottom, described as other matters and closing procedures. So that we're just looking for more accurate closing procedures where there's a review of account balances, making sure they're reconciled, making sure it's being reconciled timely, so we don't have the recurring. We get the same issue in the prior year as well. The one issue that's also down there is regarding the fund balance, but that was more of a clarification of where we were last year, because there was a significant amount appropriated, like was just talked about, of the fund balance for next year. And usually when you're, I think you're at about 7-8% of your fund balance is being appropriated. That it's a concern going forward, because you can't do that too many years going forward. And then we did have some, if there was any disagreements or any changes going on, there was one matter that I think you're voting on, and including in reserves, some of the liabilities that we reversed for litigation. Part of it is liability originally, and part of it is an expense, but they didn't meet the criteria of GASB, the Government Accounting Standards. So those got reversed out, but then I think you're voting tonight to put those same funds more appropriately into a reserve. Page 4 is just very quickly. This is what I was talking about before. This is not your general fund. This is not any of your. This is your government-wide financial statements. So it's everything all rolled up together, and it makes you look like a business. So it has all your fixed assets. It has all your long-term liabilities. It has liabilities for other post-employment benefits. So just to point out on the bottom, see there's a net deficit of 225, almost $226 million. All that is from the actuary's calculation of the other post-employment benefits, which is a liability that quantifies your responsibility for retirees' health insurance. And if you ever wanted to look in the financial statements, you'll see it's very sensitive to discount rates, which is based on bond yields. And if it goes 1% or another 1% one way or 1% one way, it'll change by millions of dollars. So just that alone had a negative impact on your overall net assets, your net position down here by $320 million. Oddly enough, we also account for your position in the pension fund for teachers' retirement system and employees' retirement system, and that actually added $10 million to your net position. So that's because they're almost fully funded. Employees' retirement system is almost fully funded, but teachers' retirement system went down a little bit. Their net position and your proportionate share of their actually decreased $13 million on your financial statements.
When the cause of the net deficit net position, that's similar to other districts, probably other everybody, right? So it's not anything to be totally alarmed about at this
Right,
point.
right. Because in New York, there's no way to fund it.
Mhm.
Some states have some mechanisms. They talked about it at the state level about funding it, but it never came through. So
And
I'm
so
not sure how many
be
we want to
alarmed.
fund
I think
liabilities.
everybody is in the same boat on that.
If I'm understanding this correctly, this page is essentially, if you had to liquidate everything, we'd be in the red because of the liabilities we have into those primarily the liabilities we would have to pay out retirement benefits.
Right, basically.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, you wouldn't have a lot of those people
I mean-
to retire. So the liability would exist because it considers current employees versus
Right.
and people about to retire. And
It's helpful to understand how to read that page. If you had to
right.
get rid of it all today, that's
Right. So
kind of.
yeah, that's the whole goal.
Right,
Everything it doesn't really affect your current situation.
right.
Because when we look on page 5,
That's the current situation.
this is your current situation. This is real stuff here.
Right.
This looks a little bit better.
So here you can see your total fund balance, and what we just talked about is your unassigned fund balance of about 4.9 million. That's about 4% of your subsequent year's budget. That's what your living is. It's about 4% limited, 1318 the real property tax law. Last year it was lower. It was 2.4. And so you can see overall the net increase in the general fund was about 8.1 million. A lot of those these items up on top under the restricted category, those reserves that did not have anything, that's what you're voting on tonight to approve. So please approve it.
This is the final copy.
So then up above in the appropriated subsequent year's budget, this is the issue we had last year, because this is a lot higher than it was in the past. It was 8% last year at 9.6, almost 9.7 million, and then this year 8.3 million. Going down the line here on the school lunch fund, kind of an anomaly. We generally with your school lunch fund, we see surpluses. Because of everything that's happening and the change of the operations of the program because of COVID, it's running at a deficit. Luckily, you did have, to start out the year, you did have $666,000 to help weather the storm a little bit, but right now, it's still somewhat of a healthy balance there, $416,000. The special aid fund, that does have a deficit, but that's mainly a temporary deficit because it's mainly for pre-K. $580,000 is it for pre-K, and then there's 360 for other funds. Generally, we don't consider anything as revenue if it's not readily collectible. So if it's not collected within 90 days, it gets deferred. So that's also, in your general fund, because, there's quite a bit of money that we defer, pending the city's making you whole for real property tax collections, which takes about 2 years for them to make you whole. Going down, the new fund here is the miscellaneous special revenue fund. That's your scholarships. So that's the in the restricted category, that's your non-expendable, and then in the assigned, that's your expendable portion of those scholarships. And down below that is the debt service fund. Eventually, that will have to start swinging into the general fund. But that'll hurt your tax cap. So that'll lower the amount that you raise in taxes. And down below that is the your capital projects fund. On page 55 of the main report is a total list of all your capital projects, which is a lot smaller than it was in prior years. So it's a lot more manageable. Well, most of that deficit is the RFA project and the energy performance contract. As funding comes through for those, whether through bond or through general fund appropriations, that deficit will disappear. On the next page, on page 6, more of a historical trend over the last 10 years. Look at the bottom line, the unassigned fund balance. And this is what was being mentioned before. There's only 1 year we got, and this is a percentage, not to your subsequent year's budget, but actual expenditures, because that's more of an indicator of where you are versus always applying it to the subsequent year's budget. Because you might have a subsequent year's budget, but you might not always expend it fully. So you might be, underexpended, or you might be more conservative in budgeting and have more in your budget. So by comparing to expenditures, you're comparing it more to actual numbers. There's a lot of ups and downs in this. One thing to note is under the accrued liabilities up in the middle of the page under liabilities. A lot of some of your litigation, you could say your reserve, your savings is up in that category. About 3.8 million is up there, put aside for that. And then in addition, your liabilities on the bottom in the reserve accounts would cover that as well. Just so it's good to put aside for your worst case scenario. Now you see that the good thing about this year, because you had the surplus, you didn't need the revenue anticipation note. So that went away. That was $8 million last year. And then the important thing to note here too is under the deferred revenue line in your state aid. You see it was $820,000 in 2020, and this year, because you received it, that ended up increasing and adding to your surplus for the year. Any questions on that?
Yes, when the total fund balance percentage, is that a significant percentage? I mean, well, two things. One, does it really mean much? And two, what would be a good percentage?
Well, the comptroller uses that. If you get under 10%, they start taking you on physical stress score. So
gotcha.
it is an indicator, because I'm comparing it to actual expenditures. Before this meeting, I had another school district meeting I was talking about. Theirs was 52%. They're a lot smaller, about a third or a quarter of your size. But theirs was at 52%, which is very high.
Yeah.
But sometimes I find the smaller the government, the higher that percentage is, because it's that money doesn't go so far.
Right.
Where here, it might cover a project or it might,
Mhm.
that type of thing.
Okay,
But that includes everything too. That includes money that, it's kind of really spoken for, like, if you're putting money aside for, retirement contributions or liabilities and that type of thing. So some of those are real liabilities and money is spoken for. And then too, like, if you ever did use all that appropriated fund balance, then, obviously that would dip down really fast.
okay, thanks.
The next page is your revenues and expenditures. Just a couple things to point out here. The real property tax is really not much movement in that. Some of the lines in the miscellaneous category under revenues, a lot of that is your the health consortium dividend that they gave you for 1.9 million. Then there's a lot of movements in state aid. And there's your transportation deduct because it wasn't in the transportation the year before. But she also had the $820,000 that they withheld from the prior year coming into this year. Plus ESSER and gears, they took away from your state aid the 2.1 million, so that 2.1 million is now in federal sources. So overall, state aid decreased 3.4 million. So it's really a reduction for transportation and just the flip flop from the ESSERs and the gears money into the federal category. Some of the expenditures, that general support line, you can see that dipped down quite a bit, and that's the idea was in 2020 at 15 million. But that was because we accrued that some of the litigation claims in that category. Now, obviously, transportation, see that going down. Employee benefits went up, but that's a lot of that's for the health consortium. That increased 1.3 million. But they gave you a refund on the other side of 1.9 million. So it kind of evened itself out. Yeah, he was talking about the budget before. So overall, at the end of the year, your revenues were about $4 million over budget. So that's about 4% over budget. Usually we look at rule of thumb, a good place to be is like 5% or under. But revenues, because of COVID and the way everything worked, you were about 14% under budget. So that was kind of high, and that's mainly what kind of gave you the surplus at the end of the year. And then you see down at the bottom of that, there's a prior period adjustment, which was just moving some expenditures for Stroud furniture from that was in the capital fund, just moving it over to where it should have been in the general fund. The rest of this is just really a graphic presentation of everything that we were talking about. If there's any questions,
Any questions for Mr. Personal? Hey, thank you very much, Leonard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our third presentation tonight is Patrick Sullivan, Director of Information Technology. So some of you probably first time you're getting to meet Patrick. Patrick, thank you for being here. Just going to provide a quick update on all things IT. I'm going to throw up his presentation on the screen here. I can.
Thank you.
No problem. Whenever you are.
So warm in here.
I think the cyber world can see the presentation, but I don't think that we
Thank
can.
you.
It keeps flickering out.
I
Weird
know,
tonight.
weird, yeah.
Disappearing.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Works, but- Friends at home can see it though.
Well, hello, everybody. Just wanted to give a brief overview of everything going on in all world of tech.
It's not gonna show up on that screen, Pat. for
That's
some
all right.
reason.
I got it. I got a copy in front of me. The first thing I just wanted to touch upon that probably everyone is hearing more about day to day, whether it's with schools or businesses, is just dealing with our cybersecurity stance. About a year ago, we started partnering with a company in Rome, MA Polsey, to kind of increase some of the security that we had in place. And they introduced myself and my team something called SOC as a service. I didn't know what they were talking about when they first mentioned it, but essentially it's outsourcing a security operations team to watch over your school district or your business. And the reason why most businesses go that route is to staff an entire cybersecurity team is extremely expensive. And the company that we went with, that MA Polsey had suggested, is called Arctic Wolf. And this is on slide 2. And Arctic Wolf, in layman's terms, is just watching everything that comes into our network. I guess a great example of something that they caught the other day is we had a teacher that had logged in from Nigeria, but she was not traveling. So we were able to catch that instantly, switch the password, any kind of odd logins, any kind of traffic coming into the network that looks suspicious. These are kind of the things that could hint at, I don't want to go as far as saying a possible ransomware attack, but you want to catch these things as quickly as possible. When we talk about the amount of devices in our district, we're talking over 7,000 at this point with all the Chromebooks. So you can imagine, I have a team of about 12 staff members to look at all the device logs and network activity of 7,000 devices is a very daunting task. This company, Arctic Wolf, has artificial intelligence and a pretty big staff. And basically they run everything that's coming into our network against a bunch of rule sets that they've already created from other businesses and school districts. And when things get flagged, they contact MA Polsey. MA Polsey will kind of review that. And if we need to take action, they will let either myself know or one of my assistants, Michael Bates. So far, it's been a great partnership with MA Polsey. When we initially partnered with them, I wondered how they would manage a district our size, but this SOC as a service has been a lifesaver for our team, with EDLA 2D becoming more serious and more school districts being hit by ransomware. I think this is a perfect solution for us to keep safe in the future. So next slide just touches upon a couple statistics on where we are with one-to-one. We've officially deployed pretty much a device into every student's hand, 5,600 devices. We've deployed 280 hotspots to help with families that are in areas that don't have spectrum and things of that nature. One thing to keep in mind with hotspots is they work off of cellular towers. So even though a hotspot is seen as a solution to provide someone like that with internet, if say AT&T or Verizon doesn't have a great cell signal in that area, the hotspot still will not do much. So unfortunately, we learned that the hard way with a few families, but we were able to, you can switch the network the hotspot is on. So say, for instance, that they're in an area where AT&T does not have great coverage, you can switch that hotspot to Verizon or to another one. But
in my own office, as you see them here, my work phone is Verizon, my personal phone is AT&T. I have no signal in my office on AT&T. I have to make all my calls from my work phone. So that's a good thing, because I know Camden area seems to be, out that way, very strong on Verizon, but North Country seems to be much better on AT&T. So we're so expansive. That's important for our families to know.
Yeah, the hotspots they're from a company called Kajit, and they're already pre-filtered, so it doesn't just provide unrestricted internet to students. It tries its best to just unrestrict the educational websites that they're going to be on, the Google Apps for Education, Things like Zern are being used now, so they do their best to, they're not just handing a student essentially a unrestricted cell phone or an unrestricted internet, so it's a very safe company. And the hotspots, believe it or not, are unlimited data, which you don't hear that often anymore from cellular companies. So it's pretty amazing that they're able to do that.
Does that include teachers too, who were struggling? I know we had a few educators who were struggling with
We have
signal. at home.
provided a few teachers some hotspots. We still have some more if there's anyone in need. Yep, we can do that also. The only thing I would caution teachers on, not that they're gonna, they may find that those Khajiit devices are almost too restrictive for them to teach with in terms of YouTube and things like that, that I know that teachers like to use with remote instruction. But if there's more requests with that, we can look into that and possibly create a separate group from the students to unrestrict them a little bit more for them.
Patrick, what's the replacement cycle on the Chromebooks and the hotspots?
That's a good question. The replacement cycle on the Chromebooks is between 4 and 6 years. Right now, we're in our first kind of replacement cycle for devices that came into the district when I started about 5 years ago. They've lasted. I think what you're going to see more with Chromebooks is actually the breakage of them from the use rather than the Chromebook dying. They're fairly simple devices, very similar to a laptop. The operating system is a lot simpler than your typical Windows device or Mac device, and the management of them is pretty seamless. That's why you see a lot of school districts adopting Chromebooks. The hotspots, that's a phenomenal question. I don't know if there's a specified replacement cycle, but let me look into that for you guys and see if I can get an answer on that.
So if we wanted to, if we're planning to remain one-to-one,
Yep.
we're looking at for a student coming into kindergarten, potentially 3 devices over the course of their
That's correct. That's exactly correct. Yep.
education.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I think the original plan when I came on board was to start with grades 5 and 9. So you're talking about 2 replacement cycles. But even though COVID has been tough for everybody, it's kind of thrown us into this one-to-one world, and we are kind of sustaining it and maintaining it. But yes, you'd probably be looking at new devices for a kindergarten student, new devices at towards 5th grade, and then new devices at 9th grade.
Okay.
Yeah. In one-to-one, on the next slide, we just wanted to bring some attention to some of the considerations. So like I said before, I have a staff of around 12 people that deal with the devices. What we are finding, and every district is finding, is that I would go to as far as even the setup and the deployment of the devices is fairly straightforward. What we're kind of hitting some hiccups with in terms of time and being a little overwhelmed with is the damage and tracking down missing devices. Everyone is struggling with COVID, even the students. So we're trying to be as understanding as possible. But as you can see, last year we repaired over 1,079 devices. And this year we've already repaired since September 1st, 448. So, again, I call these devices simple, but you are talking about basically a computer. So it has, and these have touch screens. They fold all the way back into a 2-in-1 device, into a tablet. So some of the parts, some of the components, there's a lot of components when you open these up. So management wise, in terms of the electronic management, pushing out bookmarks for students, Google has done an amazing job. But when we talk about repairing them, they are complex. There's a processor, there's a motherboard, there's speakers, there's microphones, there's webcams. Individual parts are sometimes going. I don't want to act like some of them are not dying, but the damage we're seeing is kind of on the increase, which has been kind of a daunting task to stay up on that for my team and also manage everything else. Students also forget their Chromebook. We all forget things, but we have a help desk system where a teacher can request a Chromebook for a kid that has forgotten. We're also noticing a pretty sharp increase, at least this year, for the amount of loaners that we have to issue. We're closing in on almost 500. So again, in defense of the students, I mean, this has been an interesting year thus far, so we're trying to be as patient as possible. And missing Chromebooks, as much as 120 is, you know, it's not like 5 or 10, but you have a lot of families, from what we're seeing, be a little more mobile, leave the district, middle of the school year, they forget to return the Chromebook. We do have the ability to geolocate them. We do have the ability to disable them. However, that also doesn't force someone to return it. For the most part, I think we're seeing a lot of people putting that in a moving box and probably forgetting about it. So this number, 120, since COVID started, has remained generally consistent as we develop more systems to track these. So
How did we do with like the graduating class of getting theirs back? Was anything, since none of us, I don't think any of us had a senior last year to know firsthand how that was communicated.
So they went, I think, a route of just emailing the student body and trying to coordinate that with one of the end of the year events. I think we've got to be a little more structured this year, and I've mentioned some ideas to Brian LeBaron, and I've got to run those by Peter. Whether it's cap and gown pickup, you drop off your Chromebook or something of that nature. I think there's a way to do this that we can follow other school districts that have been successful with something like that.
And then back to, because this is so new to all of us, as you said, we were kind of forced into one-to-one.
Yep.
Is there anything that we can do preventatively regarding the damages and things of that nature? Are there planned programs in place for us to educate kids on better use and care? And as a part B to that question, do you think that given that most of last year we were primarily remote, where this year we're going back and forth, that's
Exactly. There's more damage.
so would it be a proactive investment for us to issue the Chromebook with some type of padded sleeve? I don't think a case would make sense, or a bag, because most of the kids do put it in their backpack, but is there something we should be considering an investment in that might lower that number of damages?
So one thing that Peter and I have worked on is offering Chromebook Insurance to the
I
parents.
did see that.
Yeah, in the event that, and that's something that districts such as Custodial use. I know Little Falls uses it. Essentially, it gives the parent and us a little more peace of mind that they can protect that Chromebook in the event something goes wrong with it.
What's the approximate cost of that? I didn't.
$32. And that covers water damage, that covers even theft. I don't know the particulars of how you would file the claim, but I'm guessing it would involve a police report if it's theft related.
So $32 a year?
$32 a year, that's correct. Yeah.
Do you think that having like K to 6 leave their Chromebooks at school, because they do use them a lot, should we have them leave them at school? And then I understand like 7 to 12 cannot, do you think that would help? Maybe if the teachers encourage it.
My only fear with that would be how quickly things have changed occasionally with us going remote. And there were some teachers in some of the buildings allowing their students to leave the device at school. And then maybe the next day we shut down and then the teachers had to run the devices to them. I would say if we can plan that out, it's not a bad idea. Yeah, I would just hate to see the students sent home abruptly the next day and not have access to a device and not be able to connect with a teacher. But I do think that that's a good idea.
Yeah, because if it's the smaller kids, then the schools are obviously closer and it'd be easier to, meet
Correct.
up. But I do know that I've seen kids just drop them on the bus and
Oh, yeah.
drop them off the stairs of the bus.
Yes.
So,
Yep, we're noticing it too.
Yeah.
But Tanya, you had mentioned a padded case of some sort. So right now they're in a bag that we give them.
yeah, we have one.
My team is testing,
My high school senior did not get his in anything.
Oh, Levi's got all my kids have one.
but there's also, a device like this where you can get what's called a padded skin, but basically it would go around everything. I gotta be honest with you, in New York City, we utilize those and those will also not survive a drop. That will result in a cracked screen. But you brought up the idea of educating the students. My PC specialists in the K through 6 buildings do try to get around to as many classrooms as they can,
Okay.
just to show them proper usage, things of that nature. And as we get this more streamlined, I'm hoping that they can visit even more classrooms. So, yeah.
I assume the problems are different, you know, a high schooler, it's like, please don't leave it in your car. Please
Yes.
don't, you know,
Yes.
where a younger kid, you're like, please don't drop it.
The younger kids, it's a lot of chocolate milk spills. And those
Oh.
those are not pleasant to clean up and, yes. So, but altogether, I mean, I got to give a lot of credit to everyone involved, the teachers, the students, my team, to go from where we were at to 5,600 devices in that short period of time is amazing. And we are sustaining it. We are getting there. It's just revising and improving this whole process, and we'll get there.
Well, and when we met with the high school students at the end of last year, you know, we did our student panel, and the high schoolers, I think, you know, Peter said it himself, one of the most surprising things was those kids saying, please let us keep using them, because that's gonna be the most, that's what life is gonna be like for us. College is gonna be like this, and jobs are going to be like this, so, and they felt like they had a good handle on, you know, identifying where their work was located and what the expectations were there in their Google Classroom.
Exactly. The next slide talks about smart schools. Smart schools was basically something passed back in 2014 to help schools update their network infrastructure, and in my opinion, generally prepare for a one-to-one environment without knowing that COVID was coming. We were awarded roughly a little bit over $6 million. And if you go to the next slide, the first phase that the school district should look into if they're looking to go one-to-one is assess their network, really build up their network, make sure every single classroom has an wireless access point. There's network switches in every building. You basically want to replace everything. And that's what we did with that first phase, which is roughly $1.1 million of smart schools money. That was combined with E-rate funds to basically pay for the entire network infrastructure. After we had done that, we were, I think, in the middle of our Stroud project, and Stroud was the first building to receive interactive screens to replace the projectors. And interactive screens come with much less maintenance than a projector. You don't have to worry about bulbs. And it's pretty much a large cell phone. It's got all the apps on there. Teachers can mirror to it. A lot of bells and whistles that have been a hit so far. Phase 3 was kind of the start of our one-to-one journey. Roughly $500,000 spent on Chromebooks. This was more of scattered throughout the district, as opposed to we started in this grade and worked our way up. And then phase 4, I submitted around a month and a half ago. This is interactive panels for the rest of the school district. So every single building, every classroom would be outfitted with a 75-inch touchscreen. Just so you understand, small schools, you're told you have this money, but there is a application process. And unfortunately, it can take 12 to 14 months for anything to be approved. So even though this was submitted about a month and a half ago and it's supposed to be spent on technology, we may not actually have that plan approved or be able to start it until sometime next year. So.
Plethora of questions attached to this one. So that, obviously, we did not anticipate the closure of Staley the way that it was.
Yep.
We knew we would have to do something there at some point. And we obviously know that we had hired Ross Haber and Associates as a consultant for future planning. So this is equipping what we have now, include what we thought we would be including Staley or exclusive of Staley. And if we are going to do capital projects, is this something that we have to keep in our minds as an added cost to our projects?
So for right now, what I've been told by our regional information center and people at the state, it's better to shoot higher than what you need and draw it down. So even though the plan is in for 2 million, that doesn't mean we're on the hook for 2 million. So right now that 2 million would include Staley, even though Staley is closed. But when we purchase the panels and submit for reimbursement, it does not have to be 2 million. It can be 1.4, and then we get that $600,000 back for another phase.
So it's not use it or lose it right
You
now.
are correct.
Okay, good.
Yes. Yep.
There's no expiration on the Smart School Fund Act funding, but it is a reimbursement fund. So you have to lay out the cash first and then the.
Well, it's never that positive when we talk about these types of things. So that's, that's, look, Dave's back there nodding.
The one
knowing
thing they
that's
got
okay.
right is the no time constraints.
Okay, that is helpful. Thank you.
The no time constraints also allowed us to space this out. So if you're thinking about replacement cycles,
To answer your question about the capital projects, as you can see with the Shroud piece here, if it weren't for the Smart Schools Bond Act, we would have been $1 million in the wrong direction on funding for the Shroud project. So thanks to Smart Schools, we were able to free up money for the project to do some other things at Shroud. So this actually benefits capital improvement work because it allows you to spend that money that you would normally have to spend on any kind of technology in the building. You can roll some of it into the Smart Schools Bond Act, free up some funding to do other things, whatever that might be.
I guess my mindset was, I think we took 30 classrooms offline. And if we're not accounting for those 30 classrooms and we think in the future, we're going to need those 30 or more, given potential growth coming to this community, it's good to know that that bond is still there and that we're not going to be scrambling to say, okay, our existing buildings have it, but now we have a new building or we've added onto buildings. Now what? So that's happiness right
Yeah,
there.
good news. Doesn't happen often,
We
but
will take that. 2 cookies for you tonight, Patrick.
the next slide just talks about some of more of the instructional technology updates that we are, some of this was deployed last year, and we're just kind of phasing this stuff in. Touchscreen laptops for teachers. A lot of teachers are used to, including myself when I used to teach, where you have a screen like this or a projector and your laptop has to be right up with that screen. Once the screens get in place, they will complement the touchscreen laptops perfectly, because now a teacher can sit anywhere in the classroom and mirror their laptop to the screen wirelessly. It will take both of those components to complete that. But touchscreen laptops is going to allow those teachers to disconnect from that front of the classroom, lift their back to the classroom and sit wherever they want to. And some of them are already using styluses to annotate, say, over a PowerPoint presentation or solve a math problem in front of the students. So we want to give the teachers the option to make the classroom the way they want. And that's where those touchscreen laptops come into place. Some of the feedback from the administration dealing with substitute teachers and traveling teachers was that teachers have a difficult time unhooking and rehooking up a setup in between classes. So one thing that we purchased this year and deployed to every single classroom, it's basically a USB-C dock. There's actually one underneath that laptop, but essentially it allows a teacher to hook up one cord into their laptop and have everything, I guess, come on magically is the way I say it, but all the other cords would feed into this dock. But the idea is for a teacher, you have limited instructional time. You don't want to be fiddling with 10 wires. Just take this one cord instead of the 10 and just hook up the one cord. So far, these have been a big hit with allowing the teachers to just, if they are traveling or if they're not, the laptops are supposed to be mobile, and this is helping make them mobile again. As you install things like smart boards, projectors, document cameras, these are all cords. These are all cords that have to be connected to a device. So if we can help with that and simplify that, that's going to make our teachers happy. That's going to make our students happy.
Patrick, to that end, one of the big requests from our teachers last year, when we asked them what would help them do their jobs more easily in the remote environment, was dual monitors. So did these, will these touchscreen laptops allow them to have something different on their laptop versus on their screen? Because the big thing for them is if my kids are remote, and we have had to pivot already once, I need to be able to see my class plus see what I'm presenting.
So one thing we tried to clarify with a lot of the teachers, and my wife is a teacher, so we tried to set it up in her classroom, was there is limitations with a laptop if you could run a projector and 2 more monitors off that. Some of the teachers tried to leverage it. It was not successful. We would have to probably take all of their laptops and replace them with desktops, which would not go over well. There's a limit on how many devices you can attach to a laptop. So one of the things that we worked with our RIC integration specialist was you can actually have 2 different screens. For instance, right now that laptop is mirrored to that TV. It's
Not
acting as one screen, not working, but
We're not seeing your presentation.
you can put the laptop in what's called extended mode, thereby treating the laptop screen as one screen.
Yes,
And that is a second. So
Okay.
we tried our best to inform them of that. And I've spoken with Peter about this. I mean, I always try to be careful of the purchases, but my concern with purchasing, and we can still look into it, but my concern with purchasing, say, 800 monitors for 400 classrooms is these would probably collect dust in a year or two, and it would probably be
Right.
somewhat, I'll be careful what I say, somewhat of a wasted purchase. So I'm trying to invest in things that I know we can use for years to come to the best of our ability. One thing we did allow the teachers to do that we don't normally, because it opens up a can of worms, is teachers were allowed to start bringing in their own monitors, their own screens, extra devices, and we did support that. The last thing we ran into last year when I know that request was made was almost every monitor manufacturer was on back order.
oh, yeah,
Everybody
Without a
was
doubt,
trying to
yeah.
order that stuff.
yeah,
I do think our Stroud teachers, feedback from them with their 75-inch touchscreens was ear-to-ear smiles. So I think we're heading in the right direction to at least accommodate that and show them another option that will work for years to come.
that's helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we've upgraded the document cameras for a lot of our teachers. Again, this idea of wires, trying to reduce as many wires as possible for the teachers so they can disconnect and reconnect easily. This was something rolled out last year. These document cameras, not to get too technical, can act as a second camera in a Google Meet. So instead of them just seeing the teacher's face, they can switch to this camera and show, I don't know, a ruler and how they measure something, or they can, so there's a lot of functionality that comes with the new document cameras too that they can use. And then the next page just talks about all the software that we deployed, not necessarily knowing COVID's coming, but I'm thankful that we did this. Go Guardian Teacher was a hit with our teachers. It helps them manage a classroom of Chromebooks, drive instruction, see what the students are working on. Cami, you know, we all try to get away from the usage of paper. Cami is one of those tools that can allow a teacher to take a traditional worksheet and make it electronic so the kids can fill it out. So that's been a hit with our teachers also. And then Screencastify, we have several RFA teachers using this, Stroud teachers. That allows a teacher to bring up a slideshow, also have a recording of their face and record a video, thereby creating what's called flipped instruction. So students could go into Google Classroom. Maybe they missed that class in person, but if the teacher had recorded their instructions in this manner, the student could watch it just like they were in class. And last of the technology updates is a product called ClassLink. Another thing everyone has to juggle is, you know, too many usernames and passwords. So the idea behind ClassLink is you authenticate once into a secure dashboard where you see all of your apps that we would like you to use. Instead of you having to juggle 10, 15 usernames and passwords, you set up the passwords for those apps once, and this program saves it. If anybody uses a password manager, it's very similar to that. And again, not just directed towards teachers, but also to simplify what students are doing. In closing, none of this would be possible if our network wasn't strong. So something we're looking into now is we have what's called a 1 gigabit connection. We're working with our RIC over the next month to upgrade that to 10. The reason we want to do that is to continue to support the Chromebooks. Video-based instruction, I think, is coming and here to stay. And this is something that I think will prepare us for a long time into the future. And then lastly, I just put a bullet on there. We have a vacant position in my department. And with all of the one-to-one maintenance, the management of all the one-to-one programs, I'd like to move forward with filling that position if we could, to help with things such as Chromebook setup and deployment, Chromebook filtering and inventory, management of the Google Admins console, and management of all Google users. And as you can imagine, when we're talking almost 6,000 students, it's a pretty daunting task for my team on top of the repairs to complete that. So.
So Peter, we wouldn't have to create that, it exists, but it's vacant.
Correct.
And you said you have 12 now, so this would be a third, 12 including yourself,
Question. Yes. Yep.
and this would be a
That is correct.
13th
This would be
position.
13th. That's correct. Yep.
This individual retired last year, and as Patrick mentioned, he's very good about trying to be frugal and find ways. It was a situation where he said, let's see what happens without filling it, and see if we can get by. So we've gone probably 8 months now without that person on staff, just kind of seeing what's happening. And as you can see, through the first 6 weeks of the year, things are not as anticipated. So I think that was what's bringing forward the request.
Have we created any type of, as you can tell, I work in this kind of industry, so, you know, we obviously have a help desk and you put in a ticket. So how are students or parents reporting a problem? Are they relying solely on a classroom or a homeroom teacher, or have we created a formalized reporting system?
In the beginning of this, we created building-specific email addresses that any parent can reach out to. And my team, each building PC specialist is staffing that email along with a librarian. So if it's dealing with a technical Chromebook issue, my PC specialist will address it. If it's dealing with, say, a password request, the librarians are covering that. So,
And then I guess the last question, which would make me just want to consider this, if this was 10 years ago and I had 3 children in school and I had a 7 and 9 and an 11-year-old instead of 17, 19, and 21, you know, that would be over $100 investment for me. Now, it would have been far more of a burden on me to have to replace a broken device.
Yep.
But I don't know if there's anything that we can consider to set anything up to assist families with the insurance, should they qualify in some type of way, because if you have 3 or 4 kids with Chromebooks, that could be an expense that's not reasonable. I don't want to see us putting parents in either situation that, you know, they have a Chromebook that can't be repaired, but they also can't afford to pay for the insurance coverage. So just a thought out there from a single parent.
I have a question. How much is done about as far as kids that actually use the Chromebook? I have a daughter that's at RFA. She has a Chromebook.
mhm.
She doesn't use it. She uses her own personal laptop to do most of her schoolwork. So, I mean, is there anything like, do you actually need a Chromebook? Or because we got one because they said you need to get one, and so we got one, but she doesn't use it at all.
So generally speaking, what I usually say is, especially for high school students, a lot of the state tests, when we get closer to that point, require what's called a managed device, which means you're probably either dealing with an iPad that the school district has purchased or a Chromebook. So I think it's still good she has the Chromebook. My only suggestion would be use it once in a while so it updates, they auto update. But there's no harm in that. I would still suggest she keeps the Chromebook though, just so things like that go smoothly. State testing, and there's also sometimes apps that only we can deploy to a managed Chromebook as opposed to the personal laptop.
Gotcha.
And is the other, my understanding from the elementary teachers is the other issue with that is, because I advocate for everyone being on the same device for the reason that if I'm in a classroom, I don't know how to give her daughter direction on what's on her device.
Yeah.
Whereas if every student is using the same thing, I can be like, press this button or go to this spot because it should look the same.
It's much easier for us if everyone is on the same device. However, if they're able to navigate it on their own.
Well, and a 9th grader is obviously different than
Yes.
a 3rd grader,
Yeah.
probably. So, you know, I know that Peter felt confident in saying, I think parents should be able to use their own, but I know that that wasn't a teacher concern that came across.
The other thing that came across with some of the teachers was, as I just said, lack of some of the software that we have paid for district-wide that has been deployed to the Chromebook, but may not be it's not compatible with a personal laptop. It may just not be set up.
And the other thing was the Go Guardian, right? Like the Go Guardian is kind of a big deal for making sure the kids are staying on task and not getting onto something that they.
Generally speaking, the laptops will work with some of it, but as you can imagine, I mean, again, 12 staff, roughly 7,000 devices, and now you loop in some personal devices. It's a daunting task to get all of those, up and functioning correctly. So,
Patrick, that was a great presentation.
Thank you, Patrick. Very informative.
thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, we're ready for the regular start of the meeting now. Anybody want to take a break first or?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, take a 5-minute recess.
So we're staying in San Francisco mode.
Okay.
We're supposed to have our last in-season game today, but it got postponed until Saturday. It's impossible.
As you just let Patrick leave.
It's our last in-season and then we go into sectionals. Yeah, we qualified for that this year, so. Mhm. We don't know when that game is yet. They have the meeting. on
You might want to
Sunday.
announce that to anybody on there so they know to rejoin, or will they still be in there? Are you good with this?
Oh, no.
Yeah, we got busy. We have a break. Yeah.
Oh, let her roll. We're still rolling.
Sugar.
Wow.
Remember, we're in
Oh,
San
thank you.
Francisco.
Oh, no.
That was for 20, you gave me that.
Yeah, and this for her, for Ann.
Always out west. It is out west. We always close over last year. Can't remember. It was one of the meeting.
You prefer
Either, doesn't
She had to
matter.
come back for something, so she
Oh, and I
needed to
forgot
drive
to
out
do
west.
Pretty nice.
It is kind of a long drive.
Oh, there's someone who do a donation or autism.
Yeah. My sister plays lacrosse in college. It's hard for us to go to some of the games.
Yeah.
Utica College.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's nice.
She plays Utica once last year, so it was nice that we could just go to Utica.
Yeah. She's got a meet in college coming up, so that'll be confusing too.
Yeah.
For sure. But they have to go to the regional sectional, regionals, I think is what it's called. Somewhere, I don't know where it's at, New York. Georgia,
Oh,
the next week to compete in nationals.
it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So I don't know that, I don't think they're flying. I think they're taking a bus. I'm sure they're taking a bus.
That bowl was hilarious. No one likes the crackles.
I don't even know what that is. Is it like
That's like the
crunchy
ones with the
stuff
Rice
like that?
Krispie treats, like Rice Krispie and chocolate. I was just gonna tell you, I was talking to Karen one more time this afternoon, because we don't have much going on. It's not that I don't want to get rid of HVAC. I'm just saying, if we have a large majority of kids that we're still not reaching with what we have, we have to figure out how to reach them, whether that's promoting what we have better or
And certainly.
adding a layer.
Don't disagree with that, but the thing is, when you look at kids that are failing, no matter what. Remediation party, you're not going to get a 90% pass rate. So that when you have.
We need to get out there and
multiple- So what I was trying to get across, when you have multiple opportunities, that helps to increase.
I don't know, John. I don't know if I even believe that.
Oh, and I don't disagree with
Yeah,
that.
that's.
But what I'm
It's gonna
saying
get
is,
colder too, I
you don't
feel.
know if we're capturing 90% of the kids now or only 20%. It's hard for us to know. that.
I'm wearing a snowsuit. and
Right.
How many are we
Not even
not
playing
reaching?
around
Because
anymore. I'm done
starting with the
hoping.
number right now is so much from when we were in person.
The issue is you've got 3 different ways.
Oh, you hear my phone? Zzz, zzz, zzz.
How are you?
That's where-
People think I live
That's
home.
That's why we want to know.
I'm
what
cold.
these-
Yeah, but
It's freezing here.
But I did have
subtle ringing tone. You gonna wear long sleeves?
Yeah, I just put
But
the.
not how many.
Oh, I'm gonna
bring
a
coat, yeah.
What?
Something, a sweater.
But I feel it in my
You have
watch
to
and
know
then
how
I
many
feel
are
it, so then it makes you think.
Right, but that one's missing. So I just wanted to clarify that I wasn't saying to get rid of that particular program. That's not what I'm saying at all. And did you need me to email you the name of that student, or did you jot it down, and did you get a chance to look into that?
Yeah. Did you even notice?
Yes.
I have it on post-it. I've been able to
Oh,
look at it.
I got the.
I need a little more detail on it, too, like what was happening.
I have the parent, Dan.
No, well, actually, if you can maybe read their phone number. I'll give them a call.
Okay.
So,
She's never gonna get this, but I can.
Okay.
Oh, which one is that?
Yeah.
This one I have changed. No.
No,
Oh, all right. perfect. Thanks.
I just,
Thanks, here. That's that one.
that's it.
I'm telling you, I think I had that one last time. I'm
My
like,
hips
what
will be
the heck?
shot by the end of the night.
Honey, I told you
My knees above my head.
Because I had COVID.
Either one.
Oh.
Either one. Oh,
No, that's the old one.
Okay.
This one first. If you didn't, you did. You? Okay,
I did.
you did.
So you said it, yeah.
You did.
Mhm.
Peter, are you sure we're not having executive session tonight?
yep.
This looks long.
It is long.
This
You don't
looks
want executive
long.
session.
No, for the reason, I didn't know if we had to be provided some reasoning.
Another page, did I miss it? There's another page.
I don't know.
Oh, there's another
Are
page.
you looking?
Because I have a fresh copy.
Oh,
So mine's
yours
probably
aren't
double.
stapled.
Yeah.
Okay.
How's the press?
It's John, it's finance. He gets to read tonight.
Yep, someone's gonna pick up for me after a while.
Okay, again.
It's a long one. Okay, we ready, folks?
Let's do it, John.
Okay. We are back in session. Time is 7:40 PM. Consent agenda. Resolution to accept the consent agenda. And upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, consent agenda be accepted by the Board of Education. And pages 2 through 5 or 6.
6.
2 through 6. I so move the resolution.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bowie. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Regular meeting agenda. Finance. Action item number 1. Resolution to approve tax security proceedings. Whereas G&I IX Empire Freedom Plaza LLC filed tax security proceedings challenging the assessment on its property located at 225 Area Boulevard West, with attachment number of blah, 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 217 Area Boulevard West, 235 Area Boulevard West, 117 Area Boulevard West, 205 Area Boulevard West, 205 to 211 Area Boulevard West, 107 to 113 Area Boulevard West, and South George Street. All the parcel numbers are identified in the agenda. In the city of Rome for 2018, 2019, and 2020 assessment rolls. And whereas G&I IX Empire Freedom Plaza LLC has proposed settlement of the proceedings upon the following terms. A, maintain the 2018 assessment at $8,721,700. B, reduce the 2019 assessment to $8,211,500. C, reduce the 2020 assessment to $7,930,800. D, reduce the 2021 assessment to $5,456,100. E, establish the 2022 assessment at $5,456,100. And F, establish the 2023 assessment at $5,456,100. Whereas the Board of Education is willing to settle the proceedings in pursuant to the terms outlined above. Now therefore be resolved that the Board of Education agrees to settle the tax security proceedings commenced by G&I IX Empire Freedom Plaza LLC in accordance with the terms set forth above and in the form provided approved by Ferrara Fiorenza PC, and hereby delegates to Ferrara Fiorenza PC the authority to execute such settlement documents. 2, this resolution to take effect immediately. I so move the resolution.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bowie. Any discussion?
Rob, as always, my question on this is, what is our net loss?
It is, I for the refund year, which will be lowering the 2019 assessment, it's about 17,000. Next year, 20 is always a 1-year lag on their own, it's 21, 22. So that's a reduction of taxes of about the same, a little higher. And then they're going after where it reduces in D and F. That's about 100,000 in tax. That's redistributed amongst the levy. So you reduce the assessment, the levy will get redistributed amongst the remaining assessments.
So that's a zero net. For the-
Net zero net effect on the district.
Okay, so about 35,000 for the 2 years.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Action item number 2, resolution establishing retirement contribution reserve sub-fund for TRS contributions. Whereas the Rome City School District, the district, established a retirement contribution reserve fund pursuant to general municipal law, subsection 6-R, to fund contributions to the New York State and local employee retirement system. And whereas the Board of Education, the board, has determined it is also appropriate to establish a sub-fund within the Retirement Contribution Reserve Fund to fund contributions to the New York State Teacher Retirement System, TRS, pursuant to GML subsection 6-R. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Rome City School District pursuant to GML subsection 6-R as follows. 1, the board hereby establishes a sub-fund within the Retirement Contribution Reserve Fund to be known as Retirement Contribution Reserve TRS sub-fund. 2, the source of funds for this sub-fund shall be 1, such amounts as may be provided therefore by budgetary appropriation or raised by tax therefore. 2, such revenues as are not required by law to be paid into any other fund or account. 3, such other funds as may be legally appropriated. And 4, such amounts as may be transferred from other reserve funds as authorized by applicable law. 3, the board may authorize expenditures from this sub-fund by resolution. Except as otherwise provided by law, monies in this sub-fund may only be appropriated to finance retirement contributions to TRS and or to offset all or a portion of the amount deducted from the monies apportioned to the district from the state for support of schools pursuant to education law section 521. 4, no member of the board or employee of the district shall A, authorize a withdrawal from the sub-fund for any purpose except as provided in GML section 6-R, or B, expend money withdrawn from the sub-fund for a purpose other than is provided in GML section 6-R. 5, the monies contributed to the sub-fund during any fiscal year shall not exceed 2% of the total compensation or salaries of all teachers employed by the district who are members of TRS paid during the immediately preceding fiscal year, and the balance of the sub-fund shall not exceed 10% of the total compensation or salaries of all teachers employed by the district who are members of TRS paid during the immediately preceding fiscal year. 6, the treasurer is hereby authorized and directed to deposit and invest the monies of the such fund in accordance with sections 10 and 11 of the GML and other applicable law. 7, the district shall account for the sub-fund separate and apart from all other funds of the district to show the source, date, and amount of each sum paid into the sub-fund, interest earned by the sub-fund, capital gains or losses resulting from the sale of investments of the sub-fund, the order, purpose, date, and amount of each payment from the sub-fund, the assets of the sub-fund, indicating cash balance and the schedule of investments. The district within 60 days of the end of each fiscal year shall furnish a detailed report of the operation condition of the sub-fund to the board. 8, this resolution shall take effect immediately. So move the resolution.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Reddick. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Yeah.
Take
Go
it?
ahead, I'm
All
sorry,
right.
I'm sorry.
Item number 3, resolution to transfer monies from the Employee Benefit Accrued Liability Reserve Fund. Whereas Rome City School District, the school district, established an Employee Benefit Accrued Liability Reserve Fund in accordance with the General Municipal Law, Section 6P, Employee Benefit Accrued Liability Reserve Fund, and whereas there are currently monies in the Employee Benefit Accrued Liability Reserve Fund in excess of the amount required to pay costs authorized by General Municipal Law, Section 6-P, Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the school district has hereby approved the transfer of up to $52,654 from the Employee Benefit Accrued Liability Reserve Fund to the general fund. The school district has determined such excess funds are not needed for existing liabilities in the Employee Benefit Accrued Liability Reserve. This resolution shall take effect as of June 30th, 2021. I move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Davis, seconded by Mr. Hagerty. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Motion carried.
Item 4, resolution to transfer monies from the Tax Certiorari Reserve Fund. Whereas the Rome City School District, the district, established a Tax Certiorari Reserve Fund in accordance with Education Law subsection 3651 for the purpose of paying any adverse determinations resulting from challenges to real property assessments, Tax Certiorari Reserve Fund, and whereas there are currently monies in the Tax Certiorari Reserve Fund in excess of the amount required to pay any adverse determinations resulting from challenges to real property assessments. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the school district does hereby approve the transfer of up to $168,725 from the Tax Certiorari Reserve Fund to the general fund. This resolution shall take effect as of June 30th, 2021. I move the resolution.
Second.
Second by, moved by Ms. Davis, seconded by Ms. McGurl. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed?
Item
Motion
5,
carries.
resolution to transfer monies to the ERS Reserve Fund. Whereas the Rome City Schools District, the school district, established a retirement contribution reserve fund pursuant to section 6-R of the general municipal law to fund amounts payable by the school district to New York State and local employees retirement system, ERS reserve. And whereas education law section 3653 requires that no monies may be paid or transferred into any reserve fund established by a school district unless expressly authorized by a resolution of its Board of Education. And whereas it has been determined by the Board of Education of the school district that up to $2,732,436 held in the unreserved fund balance of the general fund are surplus funds, and that it is in the school district's best interest to transfer such monies to the school district's ERS reserve fund. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the school district does hereby approve the transfer of up to $2,732,436 from the unreserved fund balance of the general fund to the ERS reserve fund created in accordance with section 6-R of the general municipal law. This resolution will take effect June 30th, 2021. I move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Davis, seconded by Ms. McGurl. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I'll pick up again.
All right,
You take a break.
tag team.
Action item number 6, resolution to transfer monies to the insurance reserve fund. Whereas Rome City School District, the school district established an insurance reserve fund pursuant to section 6-N of the general municipal law, insurance reserve fund. And whereas education law section 3653 requires that no money may be paid or transferred into any reserve fund established by a school district unless expressly authorized by a resolution of the Board of Education. And whereas it has been determined by the Board of Education of the school district at up to $2,250,389 held in the unreserved fund balance of the general fund or surplus funds, and that it is in the school district's best interest to transfer such monies to the school district's insurance reserve fund. Now therefore be resolved that the Board of Education of the school district does hereby approve the transfer of up to $2,250,389 in the unreserved fund balance of the general fund to the insurance reserve fund created in accordance with section 6-N of the general municipal law. This resolution shall take effect as of June 30th, 2021. I move the resolution.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Ferretti. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Action item number 7. Resolution to transfer monies to the liability reserve fund. Whereas Rome City School District, the school district, established a liability reserve fund pursuant to section 1709, subsection 8-C of the education law liability reserve fund. And whereas education law section 3653 requires that no monies may be paid or transferred into any reserve fund established by a school district unless expressly authorized by a resolution of the Board of Education. And whereas it has been determined by the Board of Education of the school district that up to $540,561 held in the unreserved fund balance of the general fund or surplus funds, and that it is in the school district's best interest to transfer such monies to the school district's liability reserve fund. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the school district does hereby approve the transfer of up to $540,561 from the unreserved fund balance of the general fund to the liability reserve fund created in accordance with section 1708, subsection 8-C of the education law. This resolution shall take effect as of June 30th, 2021. I move the resolution.
Second.
Second by Ms. Reddick. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. It's item number 8. Resolution to transfer monies to unemployment insurance reserve fund. Whereas Rome City School District, the school district, established an unemployment insurance reserve fund pursuant to labor law, section 581, subsection 1E, unemployment insurance reserve fund. And whereas education law, section 3653, requires that no monies may be paid or transferred into any reserve fund established by a school district unless expressly authorized by a resolution of the Board of Education. And whereas it has been determined by the Board of Education of the school district that up to $124,206 out in the unreserved fund balance of the general fund are surplus funds, that it is in the school district's best interest to transfer such monies to the school district's unemployment insurance reserve fund. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the school district does hereby approve the transfer of up to $324,206 from the unreserved fund balance of the general fund to the unemployment insurance reserve fund created in accordance with labor law, section 581, subsection 1E. This resolution shall take effect as of June 30th, 2021. I move the resolution.
Second.
Second by Ms. McGurl. Any discussion?
Okay, Peter, can you just, when we're all done with these, can you just explain, like, in layman's terms, what we just did?
Essentially, what we're doing is we're taking surplus revenue from last year's budget and putting it into reserves. So we're basically covering for rainy days on all these different things. So tax
Okay.
surf areas, tax things, employee retirement reserve is if something goes up too much in employee retirement reserve, instead of taxing to get the money, we can use reserves to cover that.
Okay. Did you
These are all
look at-
reserves that we've had $0 in for years because we haven't been unable
Okay.
to have an excess of funds. So we've
Yes.
been doing okay budget wise. So now we're able to.
Put
Yeah,
money
increase,
into those accounts?
Correct.
If you're looking
Yeah.
at reserve funds, when you're looking through the financial
Yes,
later,
I
they're
saw
all there,
that,
yeah.
yes,
they haven't been there for 8 or 9 years, and now we got them back.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fancy names for different savings.
Well, I know, and that's why
That's all
I just
legal
said,
stuff,
just,
yeah.
you know, in layman's terms.
Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
And it was pretty much what they said earlier. If it weren't for COVID, this is the smart way to reallocate the savings. Doesn't mean we'll be in the same thing next year.
Well,
Poor
you got it,
Dave.
you know.
Yes.
It's an item number 9, resolution to transfer monies to the workers' compensation reserve fund. Whereas Rome City School District, the school district established a workers' compensation reserve fund pursuant to section 6-J of the general municipal law, workers' compensation reserve fund. And whereas education law, section 3653, requires that no monies may be paid or transferred into any reserve fund established by a school district unless expressly authorized by a resolution of the Board of Education. And whereas it has been determined by the Board of Education of the school district that up to $785,591 held in the unreserved fund balance of the general fund are surplus funds, and that it is in the school district's best interest to transfer such monies to the school district's workers' compensation reserve fund. Now therefore be resolved that the Board of Education of the school district does hereby approve transfer of up to $785,591 from the unreserved fund balance of the general fund to the workers' compensation reserve fund created in accordance with section 6-J of the general municipal law. This resolution shall take effect as of June 30th, 2021. I move the resolution.
Second.
Second by Ms. Reddick. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Sure, sure.
Item number 10, resolution to accept the 2020-2021 external audit report from D'Angelo and Company LLP. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the 2020-2021 external audit report from D'Angelo and Company LLP be accepted by the Board of Education. I move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Davis, second by Ms. McGurl. Any discussion?
Good
Want-
report.
Yeah, we appreciate the
wanted to
time that
compliment-
led.
Yeah, I want to compliment Dave and his staff on the work they did to give us a good audit report. Thank you.
Thank you all for the thorough meeting on Tuesday. We all have a very good grasp of what we're saying yes to. Thank you.
Mhm. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Item 11, resolution to accept the internal audit for 2020-2021. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the 2020-2021 internal audit of budgeting be accepted by the Board of Education. I move the resolution.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hagerty. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Action item 12, resolution to accept change orders, 2019 capital improvement project. Whereas the Board of Education of the Rome City School District, the Board of Education previously authorized its 2019 capital improvement project, and whereas during the course of the project, certain changes of the work covered by various contracts have been determined by Labella Associates, DPC, the project architect, to be required, and whereas the project architect and the involved contractors will prepare, sign, and submit proposed change order for the following work. ADA walks to adjacent bus loop, $15,330. Through wall flashing repairs at roof replacement, $13,334. Concrete walks at vestibule 1100 and 1130, through $39,990. Replace existing starting blocks at the pool, $56,997. And pool equipment, $17,545. Change order numbers as noted. And whereas the Board of Education has determined that it is in the best interest of the school district to approve the proposed changes and accept the proposed change orders. Now therefore be it resolved as follows. 1, the Board of Education approves the changes set out in this resolution. 2, the Board of Education hereby authorizes the president of the board to sign the change orders on behalf of the Board of Education and take all necessary actions or convenient to proceed under the contracts as amended by the change orders in connection with the project. Number 3, the Board of Education hereby authorizes the superintendent of schools to sign the New York State Education Department required certification in connection with each change order and take all actions necessary or convenient to satisfy applicable change order certification and filing requirements. Number 4, upon Board of Education approval, this resolution shall take effect immediately. I move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Davis, seconded by Ms. McGurl. Any discussion?
I have a question. Can somebody break down those numbers? I understand the project change order numbers that are in parentheses. What are the CE numbers? What are they referring to? You know?
It's just a change order number.
Probably an internal control with CNS and Labella.
Okay, so they reflect back to some.
We have a very detailed worksheet that we'll share at facilities.
Yeah,
Sure, it's
okay.
part of that.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, everything, we had a committee meeting this week, and pretty much everything we just approved, and you heard earlier was on it, so there's really nothing to reiterate there. And our next meeting will be Tuesday, November 9th at 10 a.m.
I would reiterate that we did have a conversation that if any of the new members have questions, once we look at these documents, please reach out to one of us. Or to Dave or to Rob. They were excellent in taking the time to break this down and go through our many questions. And yes, this is overwhelming in the first year. And yes, it gets easier because we have very patient people who answer all of our questions. So don't hesitate to contact one of us. It was very helpful for exercise for me this year.
Okay, facilities. Anything you want to say, Paul, there?
No, Peter mentioned that the planning meeting for the next phase is scheduled. It's a video meeting tomorrow, which I'll be attending.
Okay, then we'll be able to report us next meeting.
And did we set on, did we land on a committee meeting date?
No, not yet. As I mentioned before, I think we have to have some topics and to put an agenda together and I mean, we could pick a date, but I personally didn't think, that it was, we needed to have a meeting until we got more clarification and more information.
Maybe by next meeting, we'll
Yeah.
have something more tentative.
I think going forward, we will want to have, a discussion of primarily, the projects that we're funding and the ones that we're planning on funding going forward, to phase 3 of the capital projects.
It might be good to get updates on these projects as they're going along and any other miscellaneous stuff too, so. Okay, thank you, Paul. Educational programs.
Action items, resolution to appoint a substitute chair for the District Committee on Special Education for the 2021-2022 school year as defined by Part 200.3 Regulations of the Commissioner of Education and Section 4402 of Education Law. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, the following person be appointed as a substitute chair for the Committee on Special Education for the 2021-2022 school year. Courtney Lehman, school psychologist. I move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Davis, second by Ms. McGurl. Any discussion?
Can you just clarify who the current chair is?
There's several, there's a lot of them. Then there's other sub chairs as well. She was just a late hire.
Okay,
So she was not.
I thought we had a whole
normally-
list. Okay,
We appointed them at the reorg meeting.
Mhm. Yep.
okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carries.
So we had a very robust conversation and want to say, hope everything's okay, Chris, that you've been able to stay with us for the meeting, but Jennifer DeFerno spent a long time with us explaining our credit recovery programs. We have, Karen and I had a phone conversation today with Chris to ask for some additional data because we really want to get a grasp on, we have these credit recovery programs for the high school students, and Jennifer did agree, online might not be the way to reach every student. So what we have asked Chris for is of the main subjects, the core subjects that students are required for graduation. Can we get some data for our current 9th, 10th, and 11th? Is that what we determined? So get some 8th, 9th, and 10th grade data from
8th, 9th, and 10th grade data from the last 3 years.
from the last 3 years, so that we can kind of take a look at, are there specific subjects that students aren't succeeding in? Are there a small number of students not succeeding in multiple subjects, or more students having individual issues? And how are we capturing them when they are not successful? Are they repeating the class? Are they enrolling in one of the programs that we already offer at Mentum or Apex? And Jennifer gave us a very good overview of both of those programs. Or are we missing something? Because that ultimately goes to our cohort data and our graduation rates, but it didn't make sense to us to only look at the graduation rate. We want to try to look at where the kids are now and who we can help get over that hump and recover. So it was a very good conversation, and we do appreciate the time. This has been a very informative committee, and it's been really helpful for us. Again, the conversation today is it helps us come to the board and say, if we're adding positions, then we can say this is why. If we're cutting a program, what will that long-term impact be? I believe the next meeting, we have decided that we were going to focus on supported learning. Dr. Fantana did send a list of questions that we had. So that next meeting is Monday, the 18th at 4:30. And overlapping. So one of the things that we talked about today as a follow-up is one of the reasons that students aren't succeeding our current grading policies. So I'll state this now as opposed to under my policy portion, but we do plan to it was at Chris's suggestion that we look at that, and Peter had suggested it last year that we try looking at our grading policy. So we are trying to connect with the RTA's Ed Policy Committee so that we can engage them as part of the conversation about what the best way might be to do that. So hoping to include that on next week's policy agenda, but touches kind of both committees. So grading policy will be something going forward. And Karen does have a very good calendar for us of the things that we are covering in ed programs throughout the year. Did I miss anything from our last committee meeting? I don't think that was most of it.
Thank you, Ms. Davis.
All right.
Chief Operations, Ms. Reddick, would you like to read?
Sure. Action item number 1, resolution to approve staff transfers. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves the following staff transfers. Emily Abbey, food service helper from Staley to a food service helper at Stroud, effective October 4th, 2021. Brittany Marshall, teacher aide at Staley to a teacher aide 1-to-1 at Stroud, effective September 30th, 2021. Amy Orzel, a reading teacher at Gansevoort, to a reading teacher at Stroud, effective date October 18th, 2021. Matthew Costello, building maintenance mechanic, second shift, to custodial worker, DWF second shift, effective date September 27th, 2021. I move the resolution.
Move the revolution, yes.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Any discussion? I just one point of, just for the board members, like on the Staley / Senti, we're just, so we can kind of track the Staley people. So that's why that's just like that, just to show.
Oh,
She's from Staley, she went to Senti, and now she's going to Stroud. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Number 2, resolution to appoint instructional personnel. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby appoints the following instructional personnel. Don Thornhill, position elementary teacher, tenure area elementary, BS 30 step 6 plus MS, salary $52,440, effective date October 18th, 2021 to October 17th, 2025. The expiration date of.
You don't need to read
that.
Okay. That's a good period.
Okay, great. Take care.
Right. Move to resolution.
Moved by Ms. Reddick,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Bowe. Any discussion?
What's the ECP/call?
Early childhood program, she's replacing Emily Call, who resigned last month.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Number 3, resolution to appoint non-instructional personnel provisional. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby appoints the following non-instructional personnel provisional. Lori Cole, ECP, position homeschool community liaison, salary $24,727, prorated degree, effective date October 18th, 2021, and move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Reddick, seconded by Ms. Davis. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Number 4, resolution to appoint instructional personnel probationary. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby appoints the following instructional personnel probationary. Joseph Gentile Stroud, position teacher assistant, salary $17,604, prorated, effective date October 12th, 2021 to October 11th, 2025. Shannon Bayrick, Stroud, teacher assistant, salary $17,604, prorated, effective date October 29th, 2021 to October 28th, 2025. Caitlin Carlo, RFA, teacher assistant, salary $17,604, prorated, effective date October 18th, 2021 to October 17th, 2025. I move the resolution.
Moved by Ms. Reddick, seconded by Mr. Bowe. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Would you like a break or do you want to keep going?
I can keep going.
Okay.
Do I need to read every individual one or can I say as listed
Is
below?
listed below.
Okay,
Yeah.
We'll accept that.
okay. Because this one's.
Yeah.
Action item number 5, resolution to appoint non-instructional personnel probationary. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby appoints the following non-instructional personnel probationary as listed below. I move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Reddick, seconded by Mr. Bowie. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carried.
Number 6, resolution to appoint fall sporting event personnel. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby appoints the following fall spring sporting event personnel. Deborah Bedia as a ticket taker seller, $15 an hour, effective September 24th, 2021. I move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Reddick, seconded by Mr. Bowie. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Number 7, resolution to amend shift. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby amends the following shift: grounds worker from second shift to first shift. I move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Reddick, seconded by Mr. Bowie. Any discussion?
Peter, does this affect when we return to winter months, plowing or any snow removal?
No. it does not. Good question, though.
For discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
We got to read all of these.
Number 8.
Yes.
Resolution to appoint extracurricular personnel. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby appoints the following extracurricular personnel as listed out below. To page 18.
Peter, will we get more of these like in January? Or is this for the whole year?
No, this is for the whole year. There may be a few additions here and there. I think there's a few Stroud clubs that are still out there being waiting to be seen. And in the event that sometimes there's some extra funding in the budget from the buildings that a teacher might come forward and suggest a new club,
Sure.
that could be added mid-year.
But this is the gist of it.
Correct.
Cool.
Can I ask one question?
Can we second the motion?
Oh,
before we
sorry,
take
sorry.
discussion?
I didn't think I moved it yet. I moved the resolution.
Okay.
There you go.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Reddick, seconded by Ms. Steve. Now we can have some discussion.
I just have a question about the night spot because I know it's been a concern of some of the students that there is no night spot. It's been PPE storage. Do we know if that's,
It is, my understanding is it's empty and they're up and running.
they're up and running? That's good to know. Excellent.
Gotcha.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained.
Okay, number 9, resolution. Oh, sorry.
Motion carried.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
sorry, Ron.
With one abstention.
Resolution to approve agreement. Number 9, resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves of a disciplinary and last chance agreement between the district and a member of the United Service Employees International Union. I move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Reddick, seconded by Mr. Bowie. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Number 10, resolution to approve agreement. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education hereby approves of a separation agreement and general release with a non-instructional employee. I move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Reddick, seconded by Ms. McGurl. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, motion carried. Thank you, Ms. Reddick.
You are more than welcome.
Stellar job. So the
President.
committee's next meeting is Tuesday, October 26th at 4:30. Policies.
My turn again. Action item 1, resolution to accept the second reading and adoption of policy 2410, policy development, adoption, implementation, and review. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the second reading and adoption of policy 2410, policy development, adoption, implementation, and review be accepted by the Board of Education. I move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Davis, seconded by Mr. Bowie. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Item 2, resolution to accept the second reading and adoption of policy 0100, non-discrimination and equal opportunity. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the second reading and adoption of policy 0100, non-discrimination and equal opportunity be accepted by the Board of Education. I move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Davis, seconded by Mr. Bowie. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Item 3, resolution to accept second reading and adoption of policy 0101, gender neutral single occupancy bathrooms. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the second reading and adoption of policy 0101, gender neutral single occupancy bathrooms be accepted by the Board of Education. I move the resolution.
Second.
Second by Ms. McGurl. Any discussion? Just to change things up a little bit.
I just want to say that I saw a very useful way to identify those rooms when we visited Clarkson, and I will email it. Oh, here, it just says restroom for everyone. And it was so intriguing to me that I took a picture of the sign.
Okay, that's pretty bad.
But well, what it shows is it shows that it's wheelchair accessible as well.
Yeah.
So
no, I
rather
know.
than it being, it makes it less of a,
We've actually had some staff input from staff members who are parents of transgender students come forward with some recommendations of what they can do, what we can do visually for the bathrooms to aid them as well. Yeah, there's a lot of options out there that are better than what we have.
Nice.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Item 4, resolution to accept the second reading and adoption of policy 0105. Sorry, I see my own glasses up there for a second. Equity, inclusivity, and diversity in education. That upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the second reading and adoption of policy 0105, equity, inclusivity, and diversity be accepted by the Board of Education. I move the resolution.
Second.
Second by Ms. McGurl. Any discussion?
I just want to make sure that we follow up on this and ensure that the committees that need to be formed as a part of this and the equity work obviously continue. We received an interesting report this week from Access Global from Hilda. And so I'm not sure, did that only go to the task force?
Yes.
Okay. So I am hopeful that that will be shared with the rest of the board shortly, because I think it's kind of interesting information based on their initial visits to RFA. So good information there tied to this.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Item 5, resolution to accept the second reading and adoption of policy number 0110, sexual harassment. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the second reading and adoption of policy 0110, sexual harassment be accepted by the Board of Education. I move the resolution.
Second.
Second by Ms. McGurl. Any discussion?
I just want to pass along a reminder on this one that for the next meeting, I would ask that everyone read the language for the companion policies to this. There's a point 1 and a point 2, which pertain to, one is to students and one is to employees. And we want to make sure that we can advance those for our first reading. Peter, I think we were wanting John to look at those. That where we waited on those, I think, because they had such specific language.
I forget why we wanted to wait on those. We did so much of that last meeting. We went
Yeah.
So fast.
And we're about to dive into section 1000, so.
What's really?
Good fight over there.
I don't remember it being like.
Simmer down on that end of the table.
Right.
It's getting late. I'm feeling my inner Dr. Fundant.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Our next meeting is Wednesday, October 20th. As I said, at this point, we are hoping to focus on the grading policy. the two policies that I just mentioned, 0110.1, 0110.2, as well as starting to get into the section 1000. Peter, can you give us any update? I know you and I have been going back and forth trying continually to get us migrated into Board Docs. Any news?
I don't have any new news.
Okay, we'll keep
Sorry.
trying. Our next meeting is this upcoming Wednesday, October 20th at 4:30.
Well, good to see some policies getting taken care of. So, good job.
Just about through section 0 as we committed to.
Okay, miscellaneous business. Number 1, resolution to approve superintendent's conference. Resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the following conference for the superintendent of schools. Peter C. Blake, Insert, San Diego, California, October 27, 2021, October 30th, 2021. Cost not to exceed $400. I move the resolution.
Second.
Second by Ms. Reddick. Any discussion?
Just for a point of reference, these are something that came out of the comptroller's audit that any travel of the superintendent should be approved formally by the Board of Education. Insert is the organization that we signed on with 3 years ago, and they have 3 conferences a year: fall, spring, and summer. And Insert is a group. It's called, stands for the National Center for Educational Research and Technology. There's about 110 superintendents nationally that are involved. It's an invite only. Once your district is a part of Insert, your district stays a part of Insert forever. So someday when I'm not the superintendent of Rome, hopefully through retirement, whoever becomes the next superintendent of Rome will keep that seat in that group of superintendents to lead. And essentially we meet and we spend 2 days, 3 days in meetings learning about all these technology trends in education, learning from some of the nation's foremost researchers in education, and then basically brainstorming with other superintendents from around the country.
Now, you're not going there, right?
Yes, it's an in-person conference
That's what we just did.
$400?
paid for by the organization.
Oh, okay, because I'm like, the plane ticket alone is gonna be
Yeah.
more
No,
than that.
The $400 covers things
We
like
skipped-
travel
We skipped the number
expenses,
5,
food.
sexual harassment.
No, I did
Okay,
not, because
so do
that's the one that
so
we
they're
have to cancel.
just paying- they're
Wait,
They
paying
cover
for
the
the.
cost of it.
Oh,
Are you
okay.
sure?
Good deal.
You seconded
Yeah.
it.
No? I thought it was the D.
Flipping over there?
I'm very
You
tired.
did both.
Okay.
Any further discussion? On number 1, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Number 2, resolution to approve superintendent's conference. Resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the following conference for the superintendent of schools. Peter C. Blake, 2021 National Superintendent's Forum, San Diego, California, October 30th, 2021 to November 2nd, 2021. Cost not to exceed $300. I move the resolution.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. McGurl.
Any discussion?
Again, point of reference, this was a conference that I was invited to. We spoke about this with the board, I think last month when we got the invite. I'm the only superintendent from New York that's been invited to present at this conference. It's not one I'm participating in, I'm presenting, and I'm leading a roundtable of superintendents from around the country on cybersecurity and cybersecurity issues within public education.
Peter, you're leaving for a week. Are you running away?
Well,
Peter,
I'm not
come
running
and
away.
meet it.
Are
Ironically,
you coming back?
the second conference was supposed to be in Los Angeles. It just happens to be that they're back to back, which is kind of
Yeah.
convenient.
And
It
the
is
For
very
some reason, it
convenient.
got moved from Los Angeles to San Diego, which is even more convenient.
Yes.
Who's going to conduct the next board meeting in your absence? Or
I
do you
will
need to
be on the
consider-
Zoomer,
All righty.
whatever time that is.
Do we have to
West
do it 4
Coast
hours
time.
earlier?
Do we have to do it 4 hours? You guys gotta do it 4 hours later.
Yeah,
Can
that's
we have
right.
Pacific time?
Yeah.
I'll be doing the administrators meeting from 5 a.m. That's gonna be fun.
Oh, yeah.
I heard
Any,
that, Shelley.
any further discussion? Favor, say aye. Opposed, carried. No, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Good night, everybody. We're still live.
Okay.
So don't say anything.